right, good morning. Welcome to the Finance Admin Building Committee. It's 10/17/2023. Present today is Councilman Klent, City Attorney Paul Jensen, Finance Officer Chandra Phillips, and myself. There looks to be 5 items that we will discuss today during committee. Chandra, I'll let you go ahead and
Sure.
roll out.
I'm going to lead this first one with, we're not going to mention names.
Sure.
You do have a letter in front of you requesting that they no longer be charged the minimum water meter charge due to their stating that it has been disconnected from water. What our practice is in the finance office, if they give us a copy of a letter or something from a licensed plumber that says that they are disconnected from water, because the city of Winter cannot disconnect your water unless it's due to non-payment or emergency, then we stop the minimum charge. But until we have proof that it's been disconnected, we continue to charge for it. So it does say that they hired a plumber, or I'm not sure if that's a plumber or not, but anyways, but we've just never received any official documentation from that individual stating that. So I did print off the entire rates and collections for utility billing ordinance for you. It's not clearly defined in there when we stop charging for anything. It does say that if a disconnect order is signed, then, then we charge the disconnect $50, and at that point in time, then bills cease. So, and it does state in there how to appeal any charges. This person has spoke to me several times, and at that point in time, I said, I can't do anything. I have to follow the ordinance. So if you want to appeal my decision, then you're welcome to ask the Finance Committee if they would like to shut that off for you. So just to catch you up, Mr. Clay, we're not mentioning names, but you do have a letter in front of you as well as the ordinance requesting for the minimum water meter fee to be turned off on that particular account.
And I wasn't following you. What's our ordinance say?
It's not very clear.
We started down this path a couple years ago, remember?
Yeah.
Minimum charge, but I don't know.
Practice is, and this is what we have from the city attorney, because it is the practice of what we've done and it's not clearly defined, we have to have a signed disconnect order, number 1, and number 2, on the water side, because our employees do the disconnect on the electric side. On the water side, there has to be a notification from a certified plumber that it is no longer hooked to our water system. That's where it is as of right now. I know that it's been discussed a million different ways.
Shut off years ago, so it might have been before all of us. Who knows how long it's been?
Yep.
So if we're gonna waive it, why don't we have our water guys go over there and verify that it's shut off?
Because we can't touch the curb stop. That's what our rules say, and if we start doing it, then we open ourselves up to a huge liability suit. Ask us how that went last
Go over
time.
there and turn the spigot on coming out the side of the house. If the water comes out, it's not shut off.
It's trespassing.
Make an appointment. We go in, we can go in homes and change meters. So let's, we go on people's property, we go in homes. Let's make an appointment, send our guys over there, see if it's shut off or not. If it is, quit charging. If that's what we do for other homes.
I would want to have commercial stuff.
Yes, but Steve Nielsen's an electrician.
Right.
He's a plumber too.
He is?
Yeah, he's
I have no
I
idea.
did not know he was.
Yeah, he was a licensed plumber also.
But anyway, I mean, it says for many years it's been turned off. I think if she's in contact with us, it looks like well, right there's her cell phone. I think we can make an appointment and stop by there, take our guys 10 minutes and verify that it's shut off.
Sure. If I have no problem with that, if city attorney has no problem with that, I just know that our practice is we don't go, we're not supposed to be touching anyone's curb stops unless an emergency situation or due to non-payment.
The other thing that I would probably do in this circumstance, it may not work every time, but we know who the plumber is or thing. He's still around, he's just retired. I wouldn't be afraid to call him.
Yeah,
Okay.
whatever. I mean, I just think it's pretty simple.
Yeah, I think you call to him and just say, this is the information we've got, we just want you to verify is that true or not.
Okay,
And if he says, yeah, it's true, I think we note that in the file, at least we've done our due diligence check.
okay.
So on situations like this, are we still putting a new meter in? So that
I wouldn't.
but what if
They're not part of our water system.
they turn it on, then they get free water for years, because we don't have a meter in there that radio reads.
How do they turn it on if we've disconnected it from our system?
This letter just says that it's been turned off.
So this goes back to the problem. If you're connected to the winter water system, you have to pay the monthly minimum. If you're connected, you pay the monthly minimum. If you're totally disconnected from it and not part of our water system, but according to ordinance, I mean, you look at, even state law says when you're connected, you're paying.
That's one of the questions that I would have for Mr. Nielsen, if you ask him, did he remove the meter or just turn the valve off?
It's my understanding the valve is turned off.
If it's only turned the valve off, he's still connected.
Yeah.
Well, and that's why I asked what our ordinance says. You just said it wasn't clear, so that's why I thought, well, if we have a blurry ordinance.
I think it's very clear in the ordinance that if they're connected, I don't know
We
if,
never got that put in.
well, according to state statute, when we were researching that, if you're connected to a community's water system, connected, you should pay the monthly minimum. If you're disconnected, like from the curb stop in, they've taken and disconnected or curb stop to our main, physically dug up, removed, then they don't pay because they're not part of the system. Otherwise, they're part of that entire system.
I think they can disconnect from a water system easier than digging up. If you pull the water meter and cap it, that's disconnecting.
It's not.
I disagree.
I
It's
disagree.
Well, we can disagree.
I
That's why
agree.
we have it. You know, we've had this conversation before, Jody, where you said the only way to disconnect from the water system is dig up the main and physically disconnect. I don't think so. If you pull the meter, I'm not a plumber, but I've been around them when they're doing, pull the meter, they cap the line, that's disconnected.
You're not a plumber, and Austin's exactly right. The meter could be gone. All they gotta do
Yep.
is connect it and start
Yes, they can.
rolling, and it's free water then.
Yep.
They have to be disconnected from the system, or they pay. But we've already started down that road a couple years ago and never got that done, so.
I thought we clarified things on that.
You really left it where it was.
So, I mean, if,
We could never get a general consensus from council on it. So yes, we redid this entire ordinance, but that portion was left out because there was nothing that could get done and we had to get our rates set.
We had a lot of discussions about it.
There's ways, once that meter goes out, they're not disconnected from the system. All they are at that point is unable to be
Metered.
trapped.
But they couldn't turn the hydrant on without putting the meter back, well, unless you
Yes, they
pipe through
can.
it, bypass it, you
You
could
have to put a
bypass it.
bypass on
a
it.
plumber could bypass that.
I'll bet less than 5 minutes. I've seen it done, it's just, boom.
I don't think most licensed plumbers are gonna do that.
I guess the other thing is we gotta remember that if probably not a whole lot of places don't have water.
They're vacant buildings, the only ones that we ever get requests. Vacant buildings or vacant lots.
Yeah, but I mean, if they ever started using power, then we know somebody's in there, so.
Well, they said the electricity,
They do
they're
use the
disconnected,
electricity at this
but they're not
Use
location.
electricity.
Yeah.
to keep the pipes from freezing, even though they don't have water.
Yeah.
And to show that, you know, a lot of people like to leave a light on to make sure that someone thinks somebody's there, so there's no break-ins, but do you
But I
want?
mean, like, clean water, there's different things we can roll something put in there.
I don't know that I have.
If we're doing, if we're allowing this in other places, I guess we gotta do it. We gotta allow it here. We can't pick and choose who doesn't, if it's a vacant lot, we can't pick and choose who doesn't get charged for water. Unless we need to clean up our ordinance, if we need to get back on that, we need to get back on it, but for the time being, we can't pick and choose who's not getting billed for water.
And
Well,
it's-
so maybe now is a good time to have that discussion, because we're getting ready to venture down a new avenue of meters.
Yeah, there's,
It's not just the water side. I mean, I've had 2 instances in the last month with the electric side too. We have one that is a temporary 1 month out of the year business, and they only need electricity at that point in time. And for now, if they sign the disconnect, we do completely disconnect the electric meter and they pay the disconnect. We have some pool meters that are out there where the meter is only measuring their pool, so in the winter time, they don't wanna pay the minimum, so they sign a disconnect and our guys disconnect it. So there are several,
How do they disconnect electricity to pull the meter?
they pull the meter.
But it could be bypassed, couldn't it? If you were,
That's
if you're
well above
ballsy
my
enough
pay
to try
grade.
it.
There again,
that's your realm, you've dealt in electricity.
Well, you could. I mean, you could bypass it, just like we're talking about water, but your chances of getting killed with electricity are way higher than water. You know, but same process.
and there again, your licensed electricians are not gonna get involved,
One would hope.
because their license is at risk with stuff like that.
It went through our discussions, and we don't have to have it now, but where it held up is because the conversation went to the vacant lots or whatever. And the conversation was the only way to stop billing them, if we changed it, was to dig it up. And well, maybe they'd want water there and don't want it. It's a spendy to get a backhoe in and dig it all up and completely disconnect it. Because we were talking about they're gonna get billed for garbage and sewer and water and everything for just a lot there that still had a utility line that nobody was using. And, you know, it's kind of where it lurched.
Would there be, this is totally brainstorming an idea here, but would it make sense to consider a provision that says if somebody wants to have their future bill on water shut off, disconnected, et cetera, that not only we have some sort of verification from a plumber, but B, that the homeowner or property owner agrees that at any reasonable time that we request an opportunity to inspect, we can get access to the property just to inspect it. So that all we're looking for is to see any indication that anybody has bypassed this thing, and it's gonna show up. If nobody's touched that meter for a year or 2 years, you're gonna tell it hasn't been used, that those ends haven't been connected. I'm just wondering if that would help to alleviate these concerns so that at any time within every year, you know, somebody from the water department could just make a phone call and say, we need to go in and inspect, and under the ordinance, you agreed that we could do so. We need it in there today.
Which they already have that authority
Well, they
currently.
do, but I would want it to be a little more explicit.
And have them sign
just
it.
For this exact purpose, yes.
So I appreciate you trying to find a workaround, and I don't know if we need to or what, or maybe the conversation needs, I tried to step back and look at it from the other side. And Austin, I don't know if you were in, I know I was in the conversations about why they should be billed if they are connected to the system, because it's used for maintaining the entire system that's available to. And I can see that side. I can. I just try to put myself in a position, if I had an empty lot there where I'm not using nothing, and I have no plans of using it, but I don't wanna dig it up, because that costs a lot of money, but in 10 years, somebody might wanna use it. And the other side was saying, well, they owe, because they're a resident of the city, to pay that fee to help maintain the system. I could see that too.
As a property owner.
Yeah.
There are certain
I
costs.
see the side, but
When you pull your cows out of your pasture, you still have monthly minimum at rural water. right?
yes, you do.
Yes, you do.
Yeah. And
Unless you
it's-
don't, and then.
Are you making an argument?
No, I mean, I see.
It
I
is-
like-
right,
yeah.
He's saying, and it's the same
I
thing.
see, because it is.
I don't like it, but I pay it.
It's probably.
But
why
you-
we stopped arguing about it 2 years ago, is because I feel very strong on both sides.
Yeah, I mean, I can
Because
see the
you've
other
seen
side, I
the
can't.
infrastructure invested
Yes.
to get to that. And you're a property owner with cattle. You know the value of
Oh,
that system being there.
Yeah, I mean, I.
But it
but
comes
like,
back to-
On that side of it, if you don't pay your monthly minimums, they actually come in and lock your meter, they don't dig it up. But-
You would have to pay before you got re-hooked up, wouldn't you?
And it's not a guarantee.
Oh, yeah, because you lose the right to that tap then,
You
yeah.
lose the right to that tap that's on your property.
And if you do get reconnected, don't you also have some back things?
You either back pay it if it's approved by the engineer, because if the next guy down the section line wanted.
Water flows, yeah.
Then, you know, that's on a little bit different. I mean, the city's gonna have water.
Right,
But you pay your back minimums to get it turned on if the engineer
That's what I
approves it.
thought, yeah.
Or you apply for a new tap.
one or the other. Because I remember a couple of clients that had been in that situation where they ended up having to pay like 3 years of back minimums because they wanted to get it back on.
You know, maybe they should just start working, drafting up the way it should be, and in a year it'll pass no problem. The opposition will be gone.
But as a property owner, you have to understand it. I mean, Austin, I think you bring the best discussion to this problem we've been dealing with. We have an entity here in this county, right here in the city of Winter, and we know how they handle it. We've seen state law indicate you're connected to that system, you're paying. Everybody's doing it that way except for the city of Winter.
Yeah.
Why? What happened?
Because everything else comes with it. Garbage service and sewer and,
Which you have in ordinance now that they can exempt from garbage because of it being vacant. So you can't get out of the $5, but you can get out of the $19.50.
But using that same discussion, what are the monthly fees for Tripp County Water? Just ballpark.
$34 in the off-season.
$34 in the off-season. So
Yeah.
in a year, you'd spend $500 to be connected to the system in minimum usage of,
Oh, minimum usage.
yeah, minimum usages. Ours, with all of those, is $720. But that's for paved roads, curb and gutter, to have those services. And we've seen other places, I've seen other towns that where they lose population, service, then all of a sudden their streets go apart, their water systems fall apart. I've seen the electrical systems fall apart. I don't
Well,
know.
I mean,
Back to this person, I think,
I think the ordinance needs to get to, I think we gotta get back after that ordinance as much as I dislike putting old ordinances up, but I think we need to do that. I think for the time being, if we're letting people do this, we need to do it for this one.
can I ask, when is the last time we did one of these?
Water side, it's been probably a year. Electric side, we've had 2 requests in the last couple months. One just came through yesterday and the other one was in August.
I think we keep
That's 1/10 of
consistent
one.
until the new
Or well,
ordinance
actually,
gets.
technically, if you want to talk about it, you guys just approved to donate to one last night too, so there's a third one. that's
So
only on for.
at
one
that
month of the
attrition
year.
rate, it's 0.1%. Eventually, with that attrition, it eventually dries up.
So again, when we do this, you guys know me, I like it in black and white so that I can know exactly what to do, because I don't like having to pick and choose who to help. But there are those businesses there, and it was named at the council meeting last night that you donated electricity to, or in lieu of electricity. Again, that's one that's only on for 3 weeks out of the year. So those are all things that you guys need to consider when you're doing this.
It just wasn't electricity though, wasn't it? Wasn't a garbage service?
There was a
on there,
garbage
too?
service as well, yeah.
On that same account.
And then they can sign the exemption form at that point. But when there's no utility fare period, after a certain point in time, they don't even have any minimum charges then.
There's no water there,
It's
that's
not
just
a-
electricity.
Yeah, it's not a residential or a commercial, I mean,
And it's a
we're
nonprofit.
dealing with a nonprofit, to me, two
Right.
totally different things here. But-
That one, correct. We've got a residential one in front of you, we have a business in front of you, and we've got a nonprofit in front of you. So, I mean, you gotta consider how you're gonna treat each individual item. And I think that they should all be listed. I mean, if we are going to adjust this ordinance, we need to have each one listed in there.
Oftentimes, we find the answer in what the state statute is. We've found it that way often over the last 6 years. And I think when we take a look at those, the answer is there. Always has been. I think. Could be wrong. Okay. My question is, how do you treat everybody? If we redo the ordinance, are we gonna go back and bring everybody forward?
The last time we talked about it, it was, we weren't going to retroactivate anything. We were just going to, as of the date that the ordinance went through, turn them on and start billing for them
And give people notice of
and
what's
give
happening.
people notice.
As property owners, yeah,
Yes.
I think that's fair. Okay,
We had actually started that process, and I think that's about.
You're right, it was utilities because it was
Yep.
held up in conversation and the
Yep.
utility rates have to get passed and done.
it's an interesting discussion. It's as fiery today as it was 2 years
It might have been worse then.
ago. You think so?
You wanna go back on ordinance, is that what you're saying?
No, no,
I will
It was
follow up with
utility
Mr.
committee.
Nielsen, and if I cannot get in touch with him, we will schedule an appointment and, get permission to verify from that. Until we can get the, cause you were looking for things to do, right, Mr. Jensen?
Oh, I do have a list, but I can add it.
Request from a tenant. So that has to do with this building. About 2 weeks ago, I had a meeting, with one of our tenants,
oh,
and.
in this building.
In this building, yep. They asked if it would be possible to consider doing some renovations in one of their offices that they have. I told them it would be, I said, our 2024 budget is already done. So I said, once I know where cash is sitting in January, we could look at that and bring it to committee and see if committee is willing to do that. They are willing to pay us back for it through their rent, but they can't pay for it outright due to their bylaws, but they would be willing to add it into their monthly rent to pay that back to us and sign a new lease with us.
My first question, Chandra, is
Yep.
the whole conversation is it wanted or needed? That's where,
They say needed.
and your opinion is wanted.
Well, that's their business, though, I mean,
It's our
What
building,
they're
though.
wanting
I know,
is.
but I mean,
Yeah.
What they're wanting is a single stall bathroom installed down on their end, due to working late hours and oftentimes feeling uncomfortable to travel the entire building to use the restroom when this building is being rented out, or other individuals are using this building. They feel it is a safety concern for their employees.
Can we shut those doors down here at the end of the hallway?
Those are shut. It's not necessary, because we have a lot of groups that use this after hours too. And there are group meetings that are hosted here after hours as well. And anyone who uses this side has access to the one public bathroom on this side of the double doors.
Has anybody considered what it's gonna cost to put a bathroom
I'm
in
really curious.
that far
I have
away?
not yet. I haven't even explored it yet. I wanted to give you guys the heads up that this has been asked.
So it's more than it's not remodeling their office request. They're wanting a bathroom somewhere on a different.
Inside their office
Oh.
that would not be accessible to the public.
See, my recollection is, because I happened to be on the school board at the time this building was built, and I recall some of these discussions, and one of the discussions was, do you guys have any, because there were people that wanted to put another bathroom down at the far end. And basically, the engineer slash architect came back and said, this is gonna cost you a whole lot of money because you're not set up for drainage, for a bathroom type of drain. Different to have a sink where you can gravity feed in a wall without going down into your concrete.
That's a good
bathroom
point
holder.
and good insight, Paul, because if that was gonna be a whole lot of money in construction time,
In construction,
and how many years ago, multiply that times. Ugh.
that was what, the early 90s? Yeah.
Yeah.
I guess my thoughts are is whoever wants it can get some quotes and present them to us on what it would cost to get a bathroom in their room. They present the quotes.
Okay.
They want it, they get the quotes.
We don't have to speculate on the cost, but
No,
Yeah.
but I
Yep.
mean, I don't think we need to do the legwork and get people here either. They want it. And we'll go from there. I think we do, just like we treat our supervisors, we want 3 quotes. If it's over 50,000, it needs to be bids. Or what, I mean, because.
Right.
So the only thing would be is the city of Winter would be paying for it outright. They did make that comment because their bylaws don't allow them to, but it would be reimbursed back. So if it was a bid situation, we would have to do.
they're
that.
willing to pay more rent
Yes,
to get it paid
absolutely.
back, but.
Yep.
Between an
It gonna
increase
be a
in rent
while.
and maybe an increase in the length of the period of time they're leasing.
We just increased that contract, so good luck.
We all know what our budget for 2024 is like,
Correct.
so.
Yeah.
And
it's gonna
I
be
was
a-
very clear with them on that. 2024 budget has been set. I don't know 100% what will be for, said absolutely not in 2023. I know there's no way. Number one, we couldn't even get it done. 2024, I guess we could look at cash and see if council would be willing to consider at that point in time. I said, but honestly, you're probably looking at 2025. They did ask that we look at the cash in 2024 because they do feel it is a safety concern. So I just wanted you guys to be aware of that. I like the thought of them getting quotes on it since and ultimately they're the ones who know what they would want. Versus, I mean, I could get it built for them, that doesn't mean they'd like it. Ask my husband. But, so I think that is a good,
Yeah, it doesn't hurt to find out if it's possible, and I'm not trying to be cold and callous about it, but
Yeah, I'd have them present 3 quotes back to the finance committee when.
Okay. Okay, I will have that conversation with them. Audit review.
Well done.
So I was gone at the finance committee after we had the audit, then we were busy, and then I was gone for the last one. So I did send out notes from our informal audit review, and it was very brief. Councilman Hockett, who as vice president, and Mayor Brozick, Randy Schoenfish, and myself were present. Nothing real bad. It was an okay audit, no red flags. If either of you have ever sat in a room with Randy, it takes a lot to get him excited. So when he sits there monotone, nothing real bad, it's an okay audit, no red flags.
I think both of you have sat in.
I think you both have,
I
yeah.
know I have. Austin probably has too.
Yeah.
Finance total revenues over 19 million in 2022. That's a lot more than most people would ever think. We're very fortunate with the electric fund to help supplement.
In
The-
contrast, Harrisburg at 8 million versus Winter. Compare.
The jail is a very good deal for the city of Winter. They did question why we are leasing or borrowing if we have the funds to pay outright. Their opinion is don't waste money on interest. There's arguments to both sides of that. Do you tie up all your cash and spend it all, and then when something major happens?
Then you got to borrow.
Correct. So,
You borrow one way or the other.
yep. Get all equipment labeled, even the small stuff, tools, etc. That's something that they've commented on multiple times for us. Segregation of duties in the finance department will be a comment again in 2022. Their recommendation that would get us away from that is 5 to 7 employees in the finance department.
Are they gonna pay for those?
Yeah, no.
Okay.
Neither
Thanks
are
for the
you, though.
recommendation.
Inventories have been an issue. Streets and water, sanitation, sewer, they are not accurate nor up to date, according to their expenses, which we will talk about that again here in a little bit. Keep an eye on old utility accounts and keep them up to date. So that's something that Brandy and I have been working on. As you guys know, we use AAA credit collections, and when we send them off to them, they do all the legwork for us to collect those. So what Show and Fish would like to see is when we send them off to collections, that potentially we are actually writing those off. And then if we collect them, great, but then they show as a write-off on the city side, so we don't have these outstanding bills that are 6 years old on the books. So that's something that we will continue to work on and get
They're
through.
suggesting write-off as soon as they go to collections or any?
At the end of the year,
At the end of the year?
yep,
Okay.
yep. So they recommend a once-a-year old utility account write-off.
Okay.
So, keep an eye on reported taxes from the county and special assessments. This is something that's actually gotten better over the last few years, but it's something that we still have to keep an eye on. I do think with the work that the city and the county did with, the county took a bunch of property and the city waived a bunch of special assessments. Our special assessment list is way less than it's been in a very long time, so. Minutes are a big deal. Everything needs to be in the official council minutes, bids, purchases, hiring, contracts, etc. That is how they make sure that we are doing what we're supposed to be doing, because they read every set of minutes that we have. Why do we use object lines? Grants, contracts, state legislation, they all require these to be itemized. Again, we'll talk about this a little bit more. Projects, all projects will be tracked regardless of total amount for capital assets. The city has a policy that anything over 5,000 will be tracked as a fixed asset. And then also that's a state rule as well, 5,000, 10,000, 150,000 plus. It doesn't matter how much, it's a requirement from the state and the auditors. Grants and contracts request them as well. These next two, this next one we'll talk about more in the next couple pages, but he did mention that costs will be going up next year. They have been advised to take a 30% increase. They do not know the exact amount they will go up, but they do not intend to take that big of a leap in 1 year. They don't feel that's fair to their clients or their customers. Their amount of work has gone up exponentially, and I will agree. My goodness, the amount of things that they need now versus what they needed 6 years ago because of state requirements is crazy. They are audited every 3 years, and each year when they get audited, more work is added to that as well, which is a higher cost in employees and technologies. I will say that them going to a paperless route was huge for us this year. They actually had most of the information they needed from us before they even got here, because we were able to send it electronically to them. So that was huge. The biggest thing that we did then is they came over and asked questions and said, can you explain this? Can you talk about this? And so that was huge. And they only were actually here for 3 days then, rather than in years previous, they've been here for 5 days. So that was nice. The next couple pages are some specific items that I addressed with them. City Attorney Mayor is well aware that I was going to ask these questions, because I will be the first one to admit sometimes I can be a little too black and white, and I really like to read rules. And so I asked the questions and said, am I being too black and white? And if I am, I will gladly change my thought process. Some of these we have already addressed. So the first one, choosing who we will bill for services per SDCL 9-12-5, we don't get a choice in who we bill. Council may enact, and so you guys actually talked about this last night, you may enact a resolution that states that you will not charge for certain things for nonprofits only. There should not be anything that council waives for a for-profit business, unless, you know, you can prove that there's, and that's a full council decision. You would never enact that by resolution. This resolution would need to be very specific as to what qualifies and what items can be waived. Otherwise, everything should be charged for, no exceptions. I listed several things up there that were things that I was concerned about: bulk water, accidents, services for other businesses, our bulk water truck, and then, of course, the big one that came up this year was previous garbage contractor was just giving services away, and then those individuals wanted to know, well, how come we don't still get them given to us at no charge? Last night was a great example where, yes, we charged them for it, but then council did give them an in-kind donation, or not in-kind, you actually are writing a check for it, for the garbage services collected that used to be just free. That's where we're at on that. Do you guys have questions on that? I think we've kind of ironed that out in the last couple meetings or months as to how we'll move forward with that, and passing that rates resolution with the, you know, you have to submit a written request to the Public Works Director to utilize any equipment or anything like that, and he is the only one who can approve and deny, and it has to be run by city employees unless the council motions that somebody else could run it, type of deal. So there's quite a few things in there that have more clearly defined our process on that. So I think that will be very helpful in the miscommunications that we've had in the last few months. And so there's been some good communication between myself, the Public Works Director, and the Public Safety Commissioner on how to make sure some of these things are happening, i.e. stop signs. That was a big confusion of our Public Works Department doesn't know till a stop sign shows up in their yard. Well, heck, where did this come from? How did it get hit? How did it fall down? And so there was just a lot of miscommunication going on there, and I think that we've got that pretty figured out. Bid laws and change orders. So this was right after mill and overlay and our balancing change order that we did this year. So that was the example that I used. Balancing change orders, 100% are needed. The contract may have some language in it to allow for the appointee to approve doing a project correctly, or a quote-unquote time is of the essence clause, i.e. for this year, we found out that there was clay underneath. There was no ground, or how do you say that? No base course. They had to fill it in order to do it correctly, or they would have created more problems. Didn't add any streets, didn't add any, footage or anything like that. That's the perfect example. You can put that into that contract to give them that authority and then do a balancing change order. However, if blocks or streets or anything are added after it is awarded, then a change order should be presented before the work is completed, because that is changing the full-on scope of what the contract was. So that is their recommendation to us. Ordering equipment, if anything is signed, council must approve, as this is considered a contract. And right down to the next one, placing the city of Winter on a purchase agreement for a truck in future years. There's not much else that we ask for other than equipment. It is possible to do. You can do it. However, council needs to approve it, and it must have the phrase, the city of Winter may be able to back out due to budget constraints. That is actually a state law now, that you can sign about anything you want to, but there will be a clause in there that if your budget doesn't allow for it, you get to back out of it, even if it's a 5-year lease. So that all has to be in there. 3 quotes, the 4,000 or more, the bids, or a letter stating proprietary. This is a must. The state law does not discriminate from one city to the next, and we are all held to the same authority. There's been a lot of conversations back and forth that, well, they just don't understand how Winter works. Winter, the state doesn't understand when they set that rule that Winter is this unique little entity, and we are unique, 100%. I would absolutely agree with that. We have a jail that has commissary, and we own the commissary. Even your bigger jails, they don't own the commissary. Those are a private entity that do all that. So, sometimes it is frustrating when we come in to get the the quotes and the bids and how they all work. And we were concerned about chips this year for commissary because supplies were at $25,000 and our chip order was right around $25,000. Thankfully, they've raised that to $50,000 this year. We don't spend $50,000 in chips, so we're good, or in ramens. But as much as it might be a pain in the butt, and our auditors understand that yes, winter can be different, ultimately the state law does not discriminate from one city to the next. Sourcewell and HGAC buy board contracts. So this actually came from some communications between other finance officers and throughout the state, stating that they were getting in trouble for purchasing something off Sourcewell and then come to find out it wasn't the actual Sourcewell contract. The company was stating that, yes, they are a Sourcewell bidder, but they didn't actually have the contract for that, or they were adding pieces of equipment to it, which went against the bid laws. So what their recommendation from the auditors is we can request a Sourcewell certificate, because each person who is a Sourcewell buy board, any bidding agency, they have a certificate issued to them and proof of what that bid is. And if there's anything off on that, we've added extra pieces, anything like that, then that's no longer a qualified bid, and we have to go out for bid on that product. So that is something that they're actually looking into on a lot of these bidders. That's not an us thing that we've done wrong, but they found that contractors are not being honest. If we have everything on our end, then we're safe. If that contractor was unhonest, then that's on them. So it's just one of those things, it's more of a cover our rear ends than anything else. So I know we've talked about this before, and this is one of those things that the mayor and I went rounds with, and they did agree with the mayor, so you're welcome. In years previous, when we were purchasing from a buying agency, we always had council motion to approve it. There is nothing in state law that says that it has to be motioned on. What it does state is, as long as there's not a contract, all of the above bidding agency information is received, and there is budget authority, all it needs to be done is listed in the minutes. And so that can go under a report by council or by the appointee that purchased it, and then it can be listed in the minutes. It does not have to be motioned on, and there's nothing in state law saying it has to. But you do have to match those. Is there a contract? Do we have the bidding information correct? And is there budget authority? And as long as all three of those are met, listed in the minutes is all that the state requires.
And I'm fine with that, but the state requires that. We can make a policy that tells our appointments or our supervisors that we want to.
You can add, yeah, you can add to the
We
requirement.
can add to what the state requires.
You can.
This is the bare minimum. It gives all authority to do everything. As a council, we can say, this is how we want it done.
As a motioned on policy or ordinance or resolution.
We don't, and I don't care that we don't, but I'm just saying we can. It's an option.
This was a conversation that the rest of us had had in cabinet about our land water grant for Bailey's Field. The comment was the project is $147,000, and it's just for equipment. We are actually doing the labor ourselves. So I wanted verification from them that, does this need to go out for bid? Because we've sometimes picked projects apart and been written up for it, i.e. the halfway house, and they agreed, 100% has to be bid out, even if we're doing the labor for it. You can write as many different sections of that bid and have as many different contractors be part of that bid as you want to, and ultimately have your Parks Department, Public Works Director be your main point of contact for it, and then each one of those, so your equipment your playground equipment would be one bid, your yellow stuff around there would be one bid. I'm sorry, I don't play baseball, so you'll have to forgive me on the backstops. Is that one of them? Is that a thing in baseball, backstops? Okay. So all of those different things, you can have 10 different bidders if you want to on the same contract with just having one person being the main point of contact, so. Capital improvements. So the question came up multiple times, do we need to separate our capital improvements in our software? There is nothing required in law to separate it in our software. There is a requirement in law that I have to keep track of anything over $5,000 individually. Doesn't have to do if it's a bid out project, it's $5,000, it's considered a capital asset. I am required to report it to the state and to our auditors every year. So, do we have to do it in our software? No. If we don't do it in our software, that's that much more work on the back end where I have to go pull out each individual invoice, figure it out, put it into a spreadsheet, and separate it from there. So that's where that's at. That's a decision for you guys to make if you just want one capital improvement line and then make it so that I have to go through and individually figure it out from there and then not have necessarily an accurate accounting of it. Because again, let's go back to the Bailey's Park thing. I don't know what some of those things are. So it would be a little bit more cumbersome if that's what we were to do. This next one came up quite a bit during the budget season. Disagreement with using line items. As council, you approve, ultimately your budget that you approve is the bottom line for each department/fund. You do not approve the line items within the budget, you approve the bottom lines. That is set by state statute. However, line items are required by the state statute in order to produce how you get those bottom lines. Number one, grants, rely on those quite heavily. If we don't have it separated out, i.e. this FEMA grant that we just received, life would have been miserable. We would not have applied for it. We would not have received $77,000 worth of FEMA money. You have contracts. Your biggest contract within the city of Winter goes through each line item, section by section, year by year, and starts saying, why is this one $100 more this year and not this year? Why did you spend it this year and not last year? So the line items are very, very important on the back end. I get that as a council, that's very frustrating to you. This again was one of those things that I was very black and white on at one point in time, and I have changed how I view it. Because, and this is my opinion, if you're gonna put something in a line item and then just forget about it and use it as a, what's your favorite word, Jeremy? Slush fund?
Slush fund.
Yeah. Then what's the point of the budget? So that, from my black and white world, that's frustrating to me. But I also understand that when you're making these 6 months before the year starts and a year down the road, something crazy happens, you've got to have that ability to go where you need to. The best example I heard was when we were talking about the fuel line. So, okay, we had some major storms. Our fuel line was spent in February. I guess streets ain't doing anything this year because fuel line is over. So that was a very good example of why it is bottom line that ultimately does matter. And that's what, technically, they audit us on our bottom lines to make sure that we have not gone over. But there are times that they'll come in. Inventory makes a huge difference there. As mentioned before, our inventories are off in some of our departments, and so the inventory plays a role in that too. The FEMA project we already talked about. Purchase orders, it's a state statute and a city policy. It was their statement that if policies and statutes are knowingly not being followed, then those individuals and the people who do not hold them accountable can be personally held liable if the city of Winter ever gets into a liability suit. So that was their warning to us that if we know something's not being done correctly and we do nothing about it, not only is the city liable, but the individual is not holding them accountable or liable as well.
This is where I've always said that council should have proof that there's write-ups. This right here, it says you can be personally held accountable how is it worded?
Well, I read it, it was their statement that if policies and statutes are knowingly not being followed, then those individuals can personally be held liable if the city ever
Yes.
gets it, doesn't say anybody.
So the people that are not holding them accountable is also what they were saying. If they're not being held accountable, then
I didn't see that there.
yeah. But again, there has to be proof of knowing as well. So those are the things that,
But, yeah, there's times that the council knows that somebody was supposed to be wrote up, but we have zero proof that it happened.
But if you get inquiry into that and are assured that it has been taken care of,
Yeah, we
You're gonna
produced
be
the
covered.
remedy.
yeah,
because you've.
You can
done
ask
that
the
due
city
diligence.
attorney. We've
Yep.
established that.
Yeah.
city attorney can give you certain information. They can't tell you what was on that write-up, but they can tell you that, yeah, absolutely, the policy was followed, it was followed through. And then he obviously creates documentation, because he loves that word,
Okay.
with
I didn't know
everything
we
that's
could go
happened.
ask him if there was a write-up.
Yeah,
You can,
He
Yeah,
has
we
all write-ups
established
now
that.
for everything,
yeah.
so. And then grants, the last one, West Nile grant was the last one that was really, became an issue. So grants are only to be signed by the mayor or a representative assigned by the council in a motion. So if we are not necessarily applying for grants, although most grants in the application process want proof of your minutes, but in order to accept any grant, the mayor has to sign those grants, so just FYI.
so I'd like to go back to your reference on the policy about spending. It's actually a state statute that you guys cannot see what is on the claims list until it's presented to the city, and that policy would probably not hold up. There is a state statute that says, once they have budget authority, and as long as they follow all those processes and do it correctly, first time that you can have an audit or oversight is when it hits the claims list for the city of Winter. So the policy you referenced wouldn't hold up per state law. That's one of the things that I researched and asked a lot of questions on. So when we're talking about restricting their spending, it goes back to budget authority. You've given them that authority. We just addressed in the second to last thing, as long as they're doing it all correctly. First time you can have oversight on purchases or claims is when it hits the claims lists at the public meeting, when the public sees it.
But like I said in one of our meetings, is I think just a normal conversation between council and supervisor and say, would you keep us in the loop? There's no reason that can't happen. If they just say,
Sometimes that,
do you want a supervisor that says, by state law, I don't have to talk to you about this?
well, on the flip side,
You know.
there are councilmen that will take that and overrun with it, so
But you
where's
know
the
what
balance?
I'm saying a normal conversation with two level-headed people, this communication can happen all year long.
Your key word, level-headed.
So why does everybody have to pay the price?
Well, it becomes checks and balances, and you
That's your
guys,
supervisor, so somebody's not.
I totally agree that conversation is good, but when conversation becomes not oversight or inquiry or information, and it becomes operational, you'll do this or you'll
Yeah.
do that, and you start scheduling meetings for the person that's not level-headed and that's outside the realm of
Yeah.
the
So,
duties.
talking about the budget, I have issues about this whole thing we talked about, where,
Line items.
yeah, we sit here and they talk it, and they ask us for funding. Hey, we wanna do this, and they explain, we need to do this because I'm planning on doing this because of these reasons why. Convincing us to fund that line item, which is building their overall budget. Then they spend the money however the hell they want. I got a problem with that. Where we have the issues, control is the next year, when we come to budgeting, you asked for that money last year, you didn't spend it, you're not, and we saw some of that this year.
We did?
You're not gonna get a fund on that line this year because, my goodness, we put it in your budget for 2 years and it wasn't there. You chose to roll it somewhere else, so this is not important. And then they have to lobby about, well, I wanna do this specifically. Well, we can pare that down, and we will, and we will. Have and we will. But I just,
The only thing I don't like about that is that to correct a problem or correct something that didn't get spent, that was asked for spending, to correct that, we're a year behind. You know, it's like, you got by with it for a year, we're gonna put an end to it now. I just wish we could just you know, I'm fine with whatever. I feel like the committees I'm on, the supervisors that I talk to are very open. They don't really, you know, have to hide anything. It's just.
Things change,
Conversation.
things
But-
change, things come up,
Yeah.
you know.
Here's, it's a budget process, it's a blueprint, it's like building a house, it's like doing a remodel. You guys have both done remodels. Only I have ever projected the electrical revenue budget within less than 1% perfect. 2 years ago, last year. It's a guessing game, and you don't know what you're gonna get when you get out there. It's like this base course this year. Now, when it's flagrant, I think you guys have responded correctly in this year's budgeting process. That's not what we were told. This was our expectation. And if there isn't the discussion of why those funds were shifted and the reasoning behind why they were shifted, that's well within your realm not to fund
But
those.
I think it would be way smoother and less confrontational if the team was brought along. You know, not saying, hey, I need permission, or, yeah, it's operational, I'm gonna do this, but
But
this
you-
is happening on the front side.
I totally agree, but now we're circling back to, are we all level-headed? Are we all standing in our lanes during these discussions? You know what? You asked, why does one affect everybody? You guys govern yourselves. You have that full authority to keep each other in line so it doesn't go away.
It just, turns out to be a 3-year swing, you know, 2022 budget, you do that money, 2023, it didn't happen, now we're way back to 2024 to correct it.
Yeah, with 13%.
That's longer than some people's
minimum.
terms on the city council.
Yeah.
So, you know, I have confidence in the committees, and if through the committees, they just say, hey, this is happening, this is going to be happening, and this is why. Done. And then I find out that something happened in the committee that Austin's on, I just can say, call you, you're hard to get a hold of, there's no doubt. Can call Austin, say, hey, what's going on? Yep. this
Easiest way
is
to
it.
get a hold of me is come into my office.
But you know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
Hey, but I talk to the council more than I do you about
Yep.
issues. And I say, hey, what's happening on your committee here? Yep, we talked about it in committee, we're gonna do this instead, okay. Just information.
And I think.
Two
I think
two
this-
thoughts, real quick. When I make these appointments, I'm trying to put the people in there, and I have put the people in there that I think make the best decisions for those areas in their department. I think you guys all would agree with that. And I really try to structure these committees with strengths and weaknesses of the council, where you can trust that the strengths of the people that are on those committees
Right.
will get you that right information. I think the appointeds and the supervisors are willing to communicate. I really do. It's when something goes left in a hurry.
Communication is all I want, so we know what's going on or what's coming, because
You said it last night,
but
when
we
you were
get
talking
asked
about that
questions.
new policy. Best thing we're doing is being as transparent as we possibly can.
We get asked questions by the community.
Yes,
And, you know, I always say, if I don't know the answer, I can find out for you. And I can call someone on a committee and yep, we talked about, or the committee notes are very varied. And I don't have time to watch all these committee meetings. It'd be 6 hours a week or whatever. I don't get it done. But, so I have confidence that I can call Austin or whoever on that committee and say, hey, what happened? What's going on? Wasn't there someone else filled it? Whatever. And they'll have an idea. So you're just not blindsided by it.
we're gonna start putting bookmarks into those committee meetings where if there is a big item, you can go in there and go, oh, that's not it. Just forward to the next bookmark in those. You don't have to watch the whole committee, but when a big topic comes up, you should be able to see that conversation between council and appointed and the explanations and the transparency back, I hope.
I have mentioned I'm really dumb when it comes to computers, right?
No, bookmarks are easy, and I could do that
Okay.
post-meeting. I mean, as long as the itinerary is here and you can see we've got 5 items, it's easy to bookmark each of those 5
Sure.
items.
Sure.
I get it, guys. It's all It's all trust and it's checks and balances and it's transparency.
Can I?
Somewhat of a relationship with the supervisor.
It is.
That's what I was just gonna say. It's huge to us to have that same communication. Mr. Clay called me a couple weeks ago and said, well, it's going around the city that we're asking for a bunch more property taxes. What the hell is that about? All it was is they didn't know how to read our budget. And it's just on the bottom that this is how much we ask for in property taxes every year, and people were misinterpreting it.
And I just wanted to confirm my understanding of what happened
Absolutely.
to make sure.
I
that-
appreciate that as an appointed. I appreciate that you guys call and ask those questions and get that clarification. And I'll have the same answer Jeremy Clay does if I don't know. Hey, here's who does know, or I'll get back to you as soon as I do know. So from our standpoint, it is huge too.
Ultimately, at the end of the year, the council's pretty responsible for.
Oversight of that, what they allow.
how money gets spent,
Yeah.
and it's a little bit nerve-wracking if you authorize $120,000 for a new truck. And this bottom line, the supervisor has authority to go buy 2 brand-new pickups instead of a dump truck.
Holds the same amount, doesn't
And
it?
us 6 guys have to explain that to the public.
Yeah.
That, well, I thought you guys were buying a new dump truck. Well, yeah, but they decided to buy 2 new pickups. Well, why'd you let that happen? We didn't have any say.
Yeah.
That's an example, I guess I come up with it. But I think if you get along great with your supervisors or communicate in these committees, I think we can prevent that from happening. That's just a.
Communication. And
Yep.
I don't think anybody is saying that this project or that project wasn't a good idea. Just want to be brought along with it, or, yeah, not trying to get into operational. Maybe some people are, but by and large, the majority of the time, it's.
You don't want to be
people-
blindsided in the public. I get it.
Yep.
And that's what I'm trying to get, is not the blind side, but the transparency and the disclosure of that information in projects. Now, the frustrating part is we all have opinions. You and I disagreed earlier, and sometimes appointed officials are granted that authority to make those decisions. You're gonna have differing opinions, but they ultimately have that authority to make the operational decisions and have gotten your budget authority to do that. They're supposed to be the experts in those areas, and I think we have that in all of our areas right now.
And they clearly understand that if they are spending money that we don't agree with, there will be repercussions
They
the
do.
next budget year.
They do.
So
You
we
guys
can
just
beat
don't
that.
We're
get
one
what
year
you
into
spend,
this.
so.
I mean, really, we're only about a year into this operationally. Other cities have been doing it for a long time, but we're figuring this out as we go. They may not do it as well as we do after 1 year, but it's still foreign to us, and we're still trying to figure out, how do we keep this communication going so I don't get blindsided? What are the checks and balances? And you're figuring out who we can trust from the appointeds, and I think,
It's a balancing act, and from our perspective, sad but true, who you're dealing with depends on exactly how you're going to deal.
it's a true
We know
statement.
there are certain people that I can't dare say one word that I don't want repeated across town. I don't care if it's a closed meeting, I still don't dare. Other people, we look at each other and we go, this is a closed meeting, yeah, no problem. I trust that.
But unfortunately, it goes back to what you said, Jeremy.
Mm-hmm.
It affects the communication with everybody, unfortunately.
You gotta be able to really have a developed trust. And if you get that, you can go a long way to getting the right balance that you want.
I don't think they're gonna go buy snowmobiles and ATVs or,
But the options are, that's.
it is there.
Chelsea and I wanted a side by side.
But I think the auditor spelled it out pretty clearly in that second to last bullet that they could be held liable. I mean, there are lots of laws on the books regarding how they spend, and they have to do it ethically and honestly for the citizens.
That is
And-
one comment that Randy did make. He said he was very impressed by the honesty of the city of Winter. When anything was brought up, whether it was myself, did they come talk? Yeah, they talked to you. I know they talked with Troy. I don't think they ever got down to Justin this year, but they said the honesty of, yes, we know what the rules are. Yes, we want clarification. Yes, we don't like them, but we have
We
to
had one
follow
appointed
them.
said, I don't like how it is, but
I believe they
gonna
said the
follow-
finance officer is a pain in the ass, but. And that's,
and they also said the council was a pain in the
Yeah.
ass. I'm kidding. You're supposed to be. That's the oversight.
right, so, in all, and I realized that sounded like a lot of information. It wasn't bad, it was good for me to hear that, yes, sometimes I can be too black and white. Yes, these are the rules that we follow, and, honestly, we're not the only city that has these exact same problems. I spent time with, the new finance officer in Rapid City a couple weeks ago. He has the exact same issues in Rapid City that we do here, just on a
Different
much bigger
scale.
level. They have a much bigger checkbook than we do, but it's interesting to hear that all these exact same issues happen throughout all these same cities.
I don't ever want you guys to be rubber stamps for these guys. It's supposed to be transparency. Let's discuss this. I disagree. And the thing that we got to understand, and it's tough at times. I was thinking about your comment earlier. I disagree, and I said, well, I disagree. It's okay to disagree. It doesn't mean either one of us are wrong. We just have different opinions, and that's also what happens with the appointeds. And I'm trying to, you've seen me. I've tried to check and listen to see if there's common ground between the disagreement and the solution. That's the big thing. And if we all work that way, I mean,
You don't get anything done if you lock your heels, dig your heels in.
no, you don't. But Jeremy, Austin, I'll say this on camera. I'm more proud of this council and we've had good councils before, but this council, I'm very proud of what you guys have done. I'm proud of the appointed officials. You guys have not agreed with the appointeds, nor me all the time. The appointeds have not agreed with me or you all the time, and sometimes I don't agree with the appointeds or council, but we still are moving Winter forward. It's all in the best interest. You talked to, here at 10 o'clock, we'll have our highway construction update today. Reedy Construction, and specifically their supervisor, Mike Flackus, who's overseeing this, has seen a lot of communities. And he will be I encourage you guys to go talk to him. He will tell you Winter is light years ahead of any of the communities he's dealing with, and he deals with a lot of bigger ones. He goes, yeah, and I've had conversations with different people in the public where they've come into my office and sat down, and we don't see eye to eye personally, but we've had really good conversations, and the comment was made, you have to have contention in a city. You have to have differing views, and normally when that happens, the cities will start moving forward faster because of that discussion. And 6 years, I'll never forget, after year one, I was at a football game in Wessington Springs, about a year and a half in, going into year two of the first term. And he goes, you and your council are all right. I go, what do you mean? He goes, well, past administrations, they'd take one step forward and then shoot themselves in the foot and take 2 steps backwards. We were slowly going backwards. He goes, you guys at least are taking 2 steps forward before you shoot yourself in the foot, and you only go 1 step backwards. It's progress. And I had that same conversation and asked. Now it's 4 steps forward, 1 step back. We are making, and we make mistakes. There's nobody that's perfect. I trust you guys, and I trust you guys, if you get the information, you'll work with the appointeds, and I trust the appointeds to disclose that information to you, and I think it's better than it's ever been. Is there still room for more? Yeah, and I think that's earned in that trust in the relationship.
Austin, what
Good
year-
Lord, at 9:13, I'm sorry.
What year were you illegally appointed? Because I was illegally appointed in 18. Were you 19 or were you 18 sometime also?
19.
You're-
You were here, so it must have been 19.
Yeah,
Yeah, because it was before COVID.
right before 20,
Yeah, it was before COVID.
Yeah.
yeah. See, we're still.
Actually, no,
in-
it was 19. It was
I didn't know that.
June or
That
July
was
of
the
19.
Nobody did then.
No one did. Now we have clarification, and you guys now
There's a
have,
difference between unknowingly doing something and knowingly doing something, and that was something that the auditor said. If you make a mistake, i.e. illegally appoint somebody without, I mean, yes, what you said last night, that ignorance of the law does not constitute,
innocence.
right, but at the same time, it does help with the sentence, so to speak.
We corrected our errors right away.
Correct,
I will
yes.
tell you, I had 3 great appointments to your council's 1. I'm still ahead. Hopefully you don't have to appoint anybody, but, yeah, and who was the third? Trying to
Huh?
think.
Jack Burns,
Jack Burns was the other.
Is that it?
he was
You three.
2020.
See, I always thought Justin was appointed.
Justin was,
No,
No,
he
he
was not.
actually.
He won an
so
election
he ran
against Frank Finney.
Finney.
but then he was, then he.
That's your guys' appointment just now.
Yeah.
Oh, we did it.
Yeah.
I see.
Do you guys have another 5 minutes or no? These next two are pretty short and simple.
Depends.
Property insurance
insurance
report. Sat in and talked to some reinsurance agencies, and ultimately, yes, property insurance has gone up 41%, sometimes 60%, depending on who your reinsurance agency is. We are lucky enough that our property only went up 10% this year, and the pool actually kicked back some of their proceeds that they've gotten off of interest-bearing bonds, to lower that for everyone, so we didn't have to take that 40% jump. In talking to the reinsurance people, it's still technically considered what they call a hard market. Is that what you call it? A hard market, but it's not as hard. It's like a soft hard. And these are very smart people talking, but.
I'd say it's still pretty damn hard.
So what they said is private insurance-wise, still in the hard market. For our pooling, because, I mean, all the states have a pooling insurance companies. For that side of things, we actually started seeing the property insurance increase first before the private side. And so they're thinking that ours will start to go down and get a little more modest over the next couple years. And then the private side will start seeing it too. So it was good-ish news. They don't foresee it getting worse anyways.
Well, because inflation has kind of slowed down on the
Yep.
building materials. The inflation drove it, and then.
Oh, it's horrible.
And then weather, it's just.
And a lot of reinsurance companies dropped out because they
Because
weren't
they're losing
making money.
tons of
They
money.
were, yep,
Because weather.
yep. And that's really what it comes down to, is all the storms that have happened. And it seems crazy that South Dakota is affected by tropical
Reinsurance.
storms and all of that, but
Reinsurance.
yeah, I mean, you almost have to go to London for reinsurance now. So, sales tax ballot measure, I talked very briefly about it last night, but I wanted to just give you guys how it could affect the city. So what the ballot measure is stating is that any item consumable by a human, that's how broad it is, would not be
Any item
taxed
consumable.
by a human.
What's the definition of consumable?
They don't have that in their ballot measure.
Gummies,
Yeah. Candy,
oh man.
some said toothpaste could be considered that.
Chewing
Yeah.
tobacco.
Tobacco, so
Sure.
this ballot measure has a lot of issues. Cigarettes, tobacco, that kind of stuff, we have a 3-state agreement that if this ballot measure goes through, it actually hurts the state of South Dakota, because then we would be having issues on the sales tax side with our 3-state agreement. Even though those other 2 states that we're in the agreement with, they don't have the sales tax on theirs. but, excuse me, they don't have food sales tax, but they do have tobacco sales tax. So the biggest way it affects the city of Winter is right now there is a constitutional, it's in the Constitution of South Dakota that a city cannot charge sales tax for anything that the state cannot charge sales tax on. So if this goes through, that is the sales tax that the city of Winter will be losing on all consumable by human. That is hundreds of thousands of dollars for the city of Winter.
This is too broad.
It is way too broad. The state does not, the governor has gone on record as saying she does not support it. The state does not support it, but it's a ballot measure, and so it can be voted on by the citizens, the constituents. The biggest selling point of it is you can save up to $900 a year on food sales tax at the grocery store. If you do any research and you look into it, those states that don't have sales tax on their food,
Property taxes.
Income
they
tax.
have a state income tax.
Yep.
South Dakota does not have a state income tax. Right now, South Dakota has food sales tax that anyone and everyone, whether you're from California or Rhode Island, pays. You get rid of that, now it'll be an income tax.
It won't happen. The state of Nebraska has no food tax, and I call them affectionately the tax capital of the world, because I lived there for.
I did too, yep.
And it's, ooh, we don't need that.
Them and Minnesota,
But
same thing.
your constituents
ugly.
don't necessarily understand how if you get rid of this, you get this. And
It
so
sure
it's a
seems
lot
like to
of,
me, we have a lot of people moving to South Dakota because we don't have a state income tax. And growth in the population is typically good, in my opinion.
well, it's my understanding that this ballot measure is being funded by someone not from South Dakota.
Typical,
Yeah.
very typical.
That's it?
That's it, that's what I got. And you remember every word of what I said today, right?
That's how we,
Remember, blah, blah, blah,
Yada, yada, yada.
yada, yada, yada.